Hi, I'm Amy.
And I'm Laura.
And we are Twopapergirls.
Today we're going to do our top 10 most influential books. I actually got tagged by this by a friend on Facebook just to list them, and I messaged her like, do you mind if me and Amy do a video about this instead? And she was like, yeah, that's fine, I love your videos. So we're doing this. Her name's Josie, so hi Josie.
Thank you, Josie. We've got some books that are the same, so we're going to do those first, so let's get straight into it.
The first book is The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. We were just looking at our shared books and we were surprised that this is the first book that we read out of our shared books that had an influence on us, which was surprising.
We were children when we read that.
Yeah.
Which is a bit worrying.
Yeah, because it's all about losing your innocence, and we were little innocent people when we read this.
I think that's why it was very influential on me, because it was the first book that I read where the character wasn't likeable really. Like children's books, they're likeable, but Holden Caulfield is a depressive man. But then he's so relatable, and it opened my eyes to what literature can actually be like.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was kind of the first book where there wasn't a lot of plot, there wasn't likeable people, but it just it made me cry at the end, and just metaphors and symbolism, and I watched John Green's videos about it, and yeah, it was the first book that sort of got me into literature that I don't normally read.
The next book is Paper Towns by John Green.
We mention this book in practically every video, and that's because we love it. I read it in year 9, I think. I remember me and Amy did this astronomy GCSE, and I was sat there and I just wanted to leave and get home and read Paper Towns because it was just such an addictive story, and it kind of like Catcher. It was the first one where I opened my eyes to metaphors and symbolism, and I loved it. It was amazing.
I think this book was very influential to me because of the way it's structured and the metaphors of the strings and the vessel and the grass.
Yeah.
Different way of looking at life, and just the humour in it as well. It just makes it a very readable book. And the allusion to the leaves of grass as well by Walt Whitman, which also I found was a very nice poem to read, and I enjoyed it a lot.
And after we read Paper Towns, we watched John Green's videos, and we found out about The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. This had another big influence on the both of us. It's just, I don't even know, Charlie's just such a relatable, likeable character, and this book is just, I love the epistolary style, you know, the use of letters, and it's just so well written, and the characterisation's amazing, and I just really love this book. I don't know how it influenced me.
I think it could be the ending.
I don't know.
It was hard hitting.
Yeah.
We didn't realise, did we, until the end of the book. I read it, you didn't tell me about it, and when I finished it you were like, did you get it? And I was like,
yeah,
I don't think I did. And then she explained it to me, and then it hit me, and then it made it so much more in depth, and it is very influential.
I think it also helped that we read this book when we were like Charlie's age in high school and struggling to fit in and all that kind of thing.
We never struggled to fit in.
Not with each other.
These next books are the individual ones that influenced our lives, and we're going to both go from childhood up to most recently. And the book that most influenced me as a child was The Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. I chose to hold up the end, which is the 13th one, which I thought was just very clever as a kid. I was very amused at how unfortunate and lucky 13. I love that. And just the way that the characters go through all of these things over the series, but they were siblings and they stayed strong and they got more clever as the series went on. It got me into reading and mystery, and it was very influential to me.
A childhood book that influenced me is Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. It probably had a bigger influence on me as I got older, because when I read it as a kid I just really loved everything about it, the pirates and the flying. I thought it was great. When you get older you can see the darker side of it, like Peter Pan's dark dreams, and the ticking crocodile clock is kind of like the danger of time, which I thought was really clever. And yeah, I just really love this book, I always have. It's just something magical about it.
My next most influential book is All My Friends Are Superheroes by Andrew Kaufman, one I mentioned quite a lot as my favourite book. Laura actually introduced this to me after Robin, her boyfriend, introduced it to her, and his mum introduced it to him. I love this book so much. I've actually done a review on it, and that's coming up soon. I'll say more about why it influenced me in that video, but I just think that this is the perfect book, full of wisdom and humour and topics that are just addressed in such a perfect way.
My next book I don't have with me, but it's another childhood one. It's Jacqueline Wilson's book Kiss, and I think all her books are really important for kids to read because they all address like really important issues that a lot of kids go through, like parents getting divorced and bullies and weight and all that sort of thing. But I really loved Kiss because the main character is in love with her best friend who turns out to be gay, and that's the first time I read a gay character in a book, and it was it's the first time I really thought about people being gay, and I just thought it really opened my eyes to it. And I don't know, I just really like Jacqueline Wilson's books. I kind of want to reread them.
My next book is The Life of Pi by Yann Martel. Again, I mention this one all the time. It's very influential to me. It says on the blurb, and people have said, like critics have said, that it will renew or give you a belief in religion, and it actually did for me. It restored some faith that I have in people, but it also took it away at the same time. It questions everything and morality, but it's so touching and a beautifully written book, and I absolutely adore it.
I really need to read The Life of Pi, don't I?
My favourite book, and you haven't read it yet.
I'm sorry.
I'm just going to say my next influential book after Life of Pi, because like I said, it makes you believe in God. It did make me believe in God, and I think that's why the Bible is very influential. I think how it influences so many people, how it created a religion. Like, you get Potterheads. It was like the ancient times Bible
Ancient
heads.
fandom.
Yeah, ancient fandom, and it just influenced people. And people, if they believe so much about that today, then it's very influential. And I am one of those people, so that's why it is influential to me.
My next book or book series is the Harry Potter series, and I'm sort of cheating and I've picked two, but it's because they influence me for different reasons. You can tell I love Harry Potter from my attire. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the first book, just influences me because it's such an amazing fantasy world that I could escape to when I was younger, and I just adored everything about it. Just everything in this book is perfect. Total escapism for me, just this amazing fantasy world, and it felt like Hogwarts and all the characters were my friends, and I just loved it. Deathly Hallows influenced me for different reasons. I think just that chapter called The Forest Again really hits me hard, just because it's all about Harry's dying. He's about to basically go and get himself killed, and him walking to the forest and counting all his heartbeats just really had an effect on me. I think it's just the most brave, amazing thing, and it makes me think about how this character's grown, and just the whole series is incredible, but the start and the end influenced me for different reasons.
George Orwell's 1984 influenced me because it was one of the first books I had to write about in one of my literature classes, and it was very important for me because of that reason. I needed to get a good grade. But it influenced me because dystopia is very popular at the minute, and I love my dystopian books, but reading this really opened my eyes into how the dystopian genre was actually born, and this book really creeped me out because it did have all the elements in there, and it was like the ultimate creepy dystopian book.
I can't believe this next book is in my list, but in my defence, I'm not talking about Breaking Dawn, I'm talking about the first book, Twilight, which neither of us own because we got rid of them because we don't like the series anymore.
I only kept Breaking Dawn because it's got a signed copy from Charlie Booley, who we met at Comic-Con.
I don't want to admit it, but Twilight did have an impact on my life when I was a little tween because I was obsessed with that series. Specifically the first book I still think has merit for being clever and good. It's good, I like it. I don't like the rest of the series, but that first book I was obsessed, and I made so many friends and over forums online. It just got me into reading again after Harry Potter, which is really sad, but it had an impact on my life and I can't ignore it from this list.
The Lord of the Rings series by J.R.R. Tolkien is influential to me because I'm being nagged to read it at the minute, but also I wanted to include it because it is just influential in the fantasy and the high fantasy world of genres. I mean, I haven't really read that much fantasy before I watched the films, and admittedly I watched the films before I read the book because I was young, and a young reader would struggle with this. I think I'm still struggling with this, but it got me into other series. Like, I don't know if you can see the Eragon series behind me, the Inheritance Cycle, which is also a signed copy, courtesy of Laura. But yeah, I just think it's very influential for the imagination and fantasy side of things.
My next book is actually a long poem. It's Out of the Blue by Simon Armitage, and I'll leave a link below to an actor doing a reading of this. It's absolutely beautiful and amazing. We studied this poem in GCSE English, and it just really affected me. It made me think about how you can use words in such a clever way to get a lot of emotion, and I was a little bit obsessed with this poem when we studied it, and I still love it so much. And I think it's very current to today, and I definitely recommend you read it. And it just had, yeah, it had a big impact on my sort of love for English literature.
The book that has most recently influenced me is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak, which I've mentioned quite a lot in my recent videos. I just think this is a brilliant book, and it's so raw and completely different to stuff I've read before. It's narrated by Death, if you didn't already know, which I just think is completely a different take on how to write a book. And the characters are so well formed, and the storyline's there, and I don't think there are any flaws to this book, and the topic and that it's actually about, I think, is why it's so influential on me.
My next influential book is Hamlet by William Shakespeare. I think I watched this first. I watched David Tennant, and it made me completely fall in love with Shakespeare, and oh, I just love everything about this. My next influential book is Hamlet by William Shakespeare. I think I watched David Tennant's performance of this first rather than reading it. I only read it last year. But I just love everything about it. It really got me into Shakespeare, and I used to watch my favourite scenes on YouTube over and over again just because of just the way the language was and the way David Tennant performed them. I just thought it was amazing. It really just got me excited about studying plays and Shakespeare, and yeah, it helped me with my love for literature. The book that most recently influenced me is The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which is actually an epic poem by Coleridge. I studied this in AS English Literature, and I just really loved it. It sort of brought me into new genres of literature that I could study and get excited about for university, like the Romantic period. And I just thought it was really clever. I mean, when I first read it, I didn't have a clue what it was on about. But looking back on it, I just really loved this. It just made me love poetry and older types of writing. So I was worried that at university I'd only want to do modern literature, and this made me think that the older stuff's pretty good as well.
So those were our 10 most influential books. Thank you, Josie, again for tagging Laura and letting me join in.
If you've had any books really influence your life, then mention them in the comments down below.
We'd love to hear. So we'll see you later, guys. Bye. I don't know what to say about this.
So hard to talk until you talk, and then it's the easiest goddamn thing in the world. I don't even know why it had such a big impact in me. Oh dear.